There is a specific kind of silence that accompanies the life of the chosen one. It is not the silence of the empty-headed, nor is it the quiet of the defeated. It is a weight, a heavy, golden stillness that settles over a soul when God has decided to pull them back from the noise of the world. Perhaps you have noticed it lately, this sudden, inexplicable urge to retreat. You find yourself speaking less in rooms where you used to lead the conversation. You find yourself withdrawing from social circles that once felt like home, not out of bitterness, but because the frequency of those environments no longer matches the frequency of your spirit. To the outside world, this silence looks like weakness. To those who have watched you from a distance, your recent quietness has been misinterpreted as a sign that you have finally burnt out, or perhaps that you have lost your edge. They see your withdrawal as a surrender. They think the fire has gone out because they can no longer see the flames. But what they do not understand is the spiritual principle of incubation. Before a great move of God, there is always a season of profound, almost eerie silence. Moses had the backside of the desert, Elijah had the cave, and you have this present moment. You've been too quiet lately, and it's making people uncomfortable. You see, the world is used to people who announce their every move. The world understands those who shout their victories and broadcast their struggles. But when a chosen one goes silent, it creates a vacuum that the enemy tries to fill with his own narrative. People began to whisper. They began to think they could step into your territory, speak against your name, or manipulate your path, because they assumed you were no longer watching. They thought your silence was an invitation to test your boundaries. But something is happening now. The atmosphere is shifting. Those who tried to mess with you, those who thought they could bypass the divine protocols surrounding your life, are suddenly hitting a wall they cannot see. They're realizing that your quietness was not a lack of power, but a gathering of it. Like a bow being pulled back in total stillness before the arrow is released, your life has been in a state of high-tension preparation. Now the realization is setting in for them. They are starting to notice that every time they tried to mess with you during your quiet season, they ended up inconveniencing themselves. They are seeing that the God who has hidden you is also the God who is defending you in the dark. You didn't have to say a word. You didn't have to defend your reputation or fight for your seat at the table. Your silence allowed the consuming fire to do the talking for you. This script is for those who have felt the pressure to be loud, but chose to remain in the secret place. Today we explore why your silence is your greatest weapon, and how the spiritual realm is currently responding to those who mistook your peace for passivity. Point 1. The principle of divine seclusion and the gathering of spiritual mass. When we speak of being too quiet, we're often pointing to something far deeper than personality or social behavior. We are describing a state of spiritual density, a compression of meaning and power that does not announce itself. In the physical world, noise is mistaken for strength, volume for influence, and movement for importance. But in the unseen order of things, power gathers in stillness, condenses in silence, and matures away from observation. Consider the deep ocean. The surface is loud, restless, and dramatic, constantly shifting with waves and wind. But the true power of the sea exists far below, in the quiet depths where pressure is immense, where ecosystems thrive unseen, and where the stability of the earth itself is quietly sustained. You were not drawn into silence by accident. You were pulled into those depths intentionally. This seclusion was not a punishment. even if it felt like exile, confusion, or abandonment. It was a form of divine containment. When God recognizes that a soul is approaching a major threshold, a point of irreversible change, He often places a veil over that life. He removes unnecessary attention. He makes the person appear ordinary, irrelevant, or even invisible to the world, not as a demotion, but as protection. This is how growth is preserved when it is still fragile. Exposure too early would invite interference, comparison, envy, and projection, all of which can distort a developing calling. Silence becomes a sanctuary where the ego of others cannot intrude, and where your own spirit can recalibrate without pressure to perform. This is the ancient principle of the seed in the soil. For a season, there is no visible progress. To the casual observer, the ground looks empty, lifeless, and unchanged. Yet beneath the surface, something intense and irreversible is happening. The seed must break itself open before it can grow. What looks like destruction is actually initiation. Roots stretch downward before anything dares rise upward, because without depth, elevation collapses. Your quietness was not passivity, it was preparation. It was the underground phase where identity was stripped of applause, where reliance shifted from human validation to divine anchoring, and where your inner structure was reinforced in ways no one could see. Those who tried to disturb you during this season mistook your silence for weakness. They stepped on the soil, unaware that the roots forming beneath were already extending beyond their reach. Pressure did not crush you, it trained you. Resistance did not delay you, it strengthened you. While others were reacting to noise, you were becoming immovable. And now the realization is setting in for those who underestimated you. You were never hiding, never shrinking, never retreating. You were anchoring. You were fastening yourself so deeply into the divine that external storms no longer registered the same way. What once rattled you now passes overhead. What once demanded reaction now meets stillness. Your silence has altered your weight in the spiritual realm. You carry gravity now. You do not need to announce yourself because presence speaks without words. The season of quiet refined your discernment, stabilized your emotions, and aligned your will with something higher than survival or approval. This is why you feel different now. The noise of the world no longer pulls you. You have learned that power does not rush, does not shout, and does not chase visibility. It waits, rooted, certain, knowing that when it finally emerges, it will not need permission to stand. Point 2, the mirror effect and the reflection of malice. One of the most fascinating and lesser-known spiritual realities surrounding the chosen one is the mechanism often described as divine reflection, a law that operates quietly, precisely, and without your conscious effort. When you enter a state of holy sobriety, inner discipline, and emotional stillness, your spirit begins to resemble a perfectly undisturbed lake. No ripples, no agitation, no unconscious reactions. In this state, you are no longer broadcasting emotional signals that others can manipulate. When someone approaches you carrying malice, envy, gossip, manipulation, or covert sabotage, they are not merely acting emotionally. They are unconsciously projecting their inner chaos outward. They expect a splash, they expect resistance, fear, self-defense, explanations, or emotional noise, because those reactions validate their internal narrative and give their actions meaning. But when you remain silent, grounded, and surrendered, something unusual occurs. Your spirit provides no entry point, no emotional hook for their energy to attach to. The intent they send toward you cannot penetrate your peace. Because peace is not passive. It is structured, contained, and spiritually guarded. Instead of entering your life, their energy meets the boundary of your composure and reflects back toward its origin. This is not revenge, punishment, or conscious retaliation. It is simply the physics of spiritual law. Energy must go somewhere, and when it finds no receiver, it returns to its source. This is why those who have attempted to destabilize you are now experiencing confusion in their own minds, chaos in their own environments, and unrest in areas of life they never expected to be touched. If they tried to paint you as confused, they now find themselves unable to think clearly, plagued by indecision, forgetfulness, or mental fog. If they attempted to provoke drama, distort your image, or create emotional storms around you, they are discovering tension within their own homes, relationships, and inner worlds without understanding why. What unsettles them most is that you did nothing. You didn't argue, you didn't defend, you didn't explain, you didn't chase clarity. Your restraint exposed a truth they were not prepared to face. They were never fighting you. They were fighting their own unresolved shadow, and your silence removed the illusion that you were the cause of their discomfort. This is why people who attempt to harm a chosen one often feel as though reality itself begins to resist them. Their plans unravel, their words lose power, and their influence weakens, not because you intervened, but because the universe cannot support intentions rooted in distortion when met with clarity and stillness. Your silence becomes a mirror, and mirrors do not lie. They reflect exactly what is placed before them. For individuals who rely on projection to avoid self-examination, this reflection is deeply unsettling. They are forced to confront aspects of themselves they have spent years avoiding. Envy, insecurity, resentment, and unresolved fear. This is why the chosen one's calm presence can feel threatening to unstable minds. It exposes without accusation, corrects without confrontation, and teaches without speaking. In time, they learn, often painfully, that engaging you is not a battle with another person, but an encounter with their own internal disorder. And once this realization sets in, many withdraw, not because you intimidated them, but because your peace revealed a truth they are not yet willing to face. Point 3, the psychological grounding of a sober mind. To be sober-minded is to be spiritually undrunk, to exist in a state of inner clarity while the world around you staggers under the influence of endless stimulation, emotional excess, and the constant craving for validation. Most people are intoxicated by reaction. They chase the rush of being seen, the adrenaline of conflict, and the false power that comes from outrage, applause, or relevance. Their nervous systems are overstimulated, their identities tethered to external approval. By choosing quietness, you have stepped out of that haze, you have sobered up. This choice alone creates a profound psychological and spiritual distance between you and those who oppose or misunderstand you. While they remain caught in cycles of impulse and reaction, you operate from stillness and foresight. They are engaged in a short-sighted game of emotional checkers, moving pieces based on feelings, provocations, and momentary wins. You, however, are positioned on an entirely different plane, one governed by long-term spiritual strategy, patience, and discernment. Your silence is not weakness. It is evidence of mastery. It reveals that you have explored your internal landscape deeply enough to no longer be ruled by it. When a chosen one is no longer triggered by the noise of others, the insults, the projections, the misunderstandings, they become a dangerous enigma to the enemy. The danger lies not in aggression, but in inaccessibility. The enemy's primary tool has always been leverage. Leverage requires a hook. A hook might be the need to be right, the hunger to defend your image, the fear of being misjudged, or the desire to be acknowledged. Once that hook is found, manipulation becomes effortless. A single comment, a rumor, or a provocation is enough to pull the strings. But your quietness signals something unsettling to those who rely on such tactics. It suggests that the hooks have been removed. There is nothing to grab onto. You do not rush to explain yourself. You do not argue with projections. You do not beg to be understood. You are grounded in a truth that does not require an audience, applause, or validation to remain intact. This is what marks your sobriety. It is the calm of someone who knows who they are, regardless of who is watching. This is the moment they begin to sense your weight. They realize that the petty strategies that work on everyone else, guilt, shame, comparison, emotional pressure, no longer move you. You are not reactive and therefore not predictable. You are not defensive and therefore not controllable. In psychological terms, you have exited the stimulus-response loop. In spiritual terms, you have reclaimed your authority. To the enemy, this is deeply unsettling, because influence depends on access, and access depends on emotional dependency. Your stillness communicates that you are no longer dependent. You have become unmanipulatable. You move deliberately, speak only when aligned, and conserve your energy for what truly matters. This is why silence amplifies your presence rather than diminishes it. This is why your calm carries more power than their noise. And this is why, without lifting a finger or raising your voice, you have already won. Point 4. The sentinel of peace as a frequency barrier. Peace is not just a feeling. It is a spiritual frequency that functions as a sentinel, an active, intelligent force that stands watch over the inner gates of your life. In the ancient world, a sentinel was not decorative or symbolic. It was a living presence positioned at the threshold, alert, immovable, and trained to discern what was permitted to enter and what was not. In the same way, when you have been quiet, disciplined, and deeply focused on the Father, your peace becomes a literal barrier in the unseen atmosphere around you. It is not fragile, and it is not dependent on circumstances behaving well. It is forged through stillness, obedience, and repeated surrender, and once established, it radiates outward without effort. This is why you may have noticed that people who carry chaotic, manipulative, or malicious spirits become unsettled simply by being in your presence. Even when you do not speak, explain yourself, or defend your position. Your silence alone is enough. Your calm posture alone is enough. Your frequency is exposing theirs, and exposure is deeply uncomfortable for anything that survives in disorder. Those who once relied on emotional hooks, confusion, intimidation, or subtle manipulation are discovering that their tools no longer work on you. Their words lose momentum mid-sentence. Their lies feel heavy and awkward in their mouths when they are near you, as if the atmosphere itself is resisting them. Their schemes feel foolish when they picture your composed face, because your peace offers no surface for their projections to land on. They're realizing, often subconsciously, that your peace is not a passive state of doing nothing, but an active force field that drains energy from negativity, the way light drains relevance from darkness. In your presence, their usual strategies malfunction. Provocation finds no reaction. Drama finds no echo. Fear finds no agreement. This creates what can only be described as divine friction, a zone where lower intentions cannot operate smoothly because they are not aligned with the governing frequency. And the most powerful part is that you are not trying to repel anyone. You are simply being anchored. Peace, when rooted in God, does not shout, threaten, or posture. It stands, it watches, it waits. It allows everything to reveal itself without interference. This is why those who meant to disturb you now feel disturbed by you. Your stillness confronts their restlessness. Your clarity confronts their confusion. Your restraint confronts their impulsiveness. They sense that engaging you would require them to abandon their tactics, and many are unwilling or unable to do that. So they retreat, not because you fought them, but because your peace would not cooperate with their chaos. This is the quiet authority of a guarded life. This is what happens when peace is no longer a mood but a maintained frequency. You are not avoiding conflict. You are standing in a higher order where conflict loses its leverage. And in that space, without noise or effort, your peace continues to stand watch, unbreached, unbothered, and fully aligned with divine protection. Point 5, the divine substitution and God's footsteps. There is a profound mystery in the scripture that declares, "The Lord shall fight for you, and ye shall hold your peace." And this mystery is far deeper than emotional restraint or passive endurance. It is a spiritual law, an invisible contract written into the architecture of divine order. This is not a suggestion meant to suppress your voice or diminish your worth. It is a legal exchange in the unseen realm. When you choose to argue, explain, defend, or retaliate, you are unknowingly filing a motion that says, "I will represent myself." You take the burden of judgment, consequence, and outcome onto your own limited strength. But when you go quiet, not from fear, not from defeat, but from trust, you release the case from human hands and place it into divine jurisdiction. Your silence is not weakness. It is consent for heaven to intervene. In that stillness, something shifts. The gavel is removed from human opinion and placed into the hand of the judge of all the earth, the one who sees motives, intentions, and hidden agendas with perfect clarity. Lately, your quietness has not gone unnoticed in the spiritual realm. It has been read as a declaration of absolute trust in divine justice. You could have spoken, and you had every reason to. You could have exposed, corrected, defended, or retaliated. But you chose restraint. And because you refused to fight back, the Creator stepped fully into the space you intentionally left open. That empty space was not a vacuum, it was an invitation. Now those who tried to provoke you are no longer dealing with your restraint or your personality. They are encountering the weight of divine authority. What they sense as resistance is not coming from you anymore. It is coming from the shadow of the Almighty. That is why things feel heavier for them. That is why their plans are unraveling without your involvement. They are noticing doors quietly closing that once stood wide open because they attempted to close a door that heaven had ordained for you. They are noticing their influence thinning, their credibility weakening, and their words losing weight because they tried to stain your name. You did not have to lift a finger. You did not have to explain yourself. Heaven took note of your restraint and responded with precision. They are hearing what can only be described as the footsteps of God moving through their lives, correcting what they thought they could manipulate, and rebuking what they assumed would go unchecked. Convictions are rising in them without your presence. Consequences are forming without your participation. Situations are turning against them, not because you demanded justice, but because you trusted it. Your silence became the evidence that activated divine advocacy. In the courts of heaven, restraint carries more authority than accusation. Peace speaks louder than defense. By holding your peace, you demonstrated faith in a system far higher than human validation. You allowed truth to speak for itself, and truth always knows when to rise. The highest power did not just step in as a witness, he became your lead advocate. He argued the case you refused to argue. He defended the reputation you refused to protect. He corrected what you chose not to confront. And the most powerful part of this exchange is that it required no effort from you beyond trust. Your role was not to fight, but to remain anchored in peace. And now, as justice unfolds quietly and steadily, you are witnessing a sacred truth. When you stop defending yourself, heaven begins defending you with a precision, authority, and timing that no human effort could ever replicate. Point 6, the economy of words and the weight of presence. In the kingdom of God, words are currency, and not everyone understands this economy. Many speak endlessly, reacting to every slight, narrating every thought, explaining every move, unaware that constant speech leaks spiritual power. Those who speak compulsively are often spiritually bankrupt, spending energy the moment it arrives, never allowing it to mature into authority. But you have been moved into a different season entirely. Without announcing it, without defending it, you entered a period of spiritual saving. Silence became your discipline, not because you were afraid, but because you were being trained. Every moment you chose restraint over reaction. Every time you swallowed the urge to explain yourself. Every instance where you trusted God to speak for you instead of forcing your own voice. Something unseen was accumulating within you. Scripture calls it a weight of glory, and weight is the correct word because this is not light, fragile spirituality. This is dense. This is compressed. This is power that has been forged under pressure. Now, when you do speak, even briefly, even softly, your words do not float away. They land. A simple no carries more force than your old explanations ever did. A short prayer carries more authority than hours of emotional pleading. People can feel it, even if they cannot explain it. There is a sober gravity surrounding you now, a seriousness that does not come from anger or pride, but from alignment. You are no longer noisy because you are no longer uncertain. You do not over-communicate because you no longer need validation. Your boundaries no longer come with footnotes, disclaimers, or apologies because you have learned that clarity does not require volume. This is why people are starting to respond differently to you. Conversations shift when you enter a room. Arguments lose momentum in your presence. Manipulative personalities sense resistance they cannot penetrate, not because you are aggressive, but because you are grounded. They feel that you're backed by something older than the moment, something deeper than opinion. They may not know about the nights you prayed in secret, the seasons you endured without applause, the tears you shed where only God could see, but their spirit recognizes the residue of that hidden history. Silent endurance leaves fingerprints on the soul, and authority recognizes authority. You are discovering that power conserved becomes power multiplied. Just as wealth grows when it is not constantly spent, spiritual authority grows when it is not constantly displayed. This is why heaven often trains its strongest servants in obscurity first. Noise attracts attention, but weight commands respect. You are becoming like a mountain, and a mountain does not argue for its existence. It does not announce its height. It does not chase acknowledgement. It simply stands, immovable, shaped by time, pressure, and the hand of God. Those who approach it are forced to adjust themselves. They feel its scale without being told. In the same way, your presence now requires adjustment. People must rise to your level of clarity or retreat into their confusion. This is not arrogance, this is alignment. You are no longer trying to be understood by everyone because you understand who you are. And in this kingdom, that is when words stop being noise and start becoming law. Point 7. The final realization of divine immunity. We come now to the final point of realization for those who have been watching your silence, studying your stillness, and quietly trying to understand what they cannot touch. The recognition of your immunity. There is a precise moment when opposition reaches a sober conclusion, a moment when they realize that no matter how much fire is thrown in your direction, you do not even smell like smoke. This is not arrogance, and it is not defiance. It is the unmistakable signal of spiritual untouchability. It is the moment when effort against you feels pointless, when resistance feels like wasted energy. Your quietness lately has not been accidental, and it has not been weakness. It has been your greatest testimony. In a world addicted to reaction, explanation, and performance, your silence has spoken louder than any defense ever could. It has revealed that your source of joy is no longer dependent on circumstances, that your sense of provision is not tied to visible systems, and that your identity is not negotiated by approval, applause, or conflict. While others panic at shifts in the external world, you remain internally supplied. While others scramble to secure what feels unstable, you rest in what cannot be shaken. This is why they see you thriving in your quietness, not shrinking. This is why they notice growth in your stillness, not stagnation. Your silence is not empty, it is full. It is full of clarity, grounding, and alignment. Those who once underestimated you are beginning to recognize that you are not operating on the same frequency. They are exhausted from constant striving, from endless comparison, from the need to interfere, control, or provoke outcomes. Meanwhile, you are being renewed without effort, replenished without noise, strengthened without display. This contrast unsettles them, not because you are doing anything to them, but because your peace exposes their inner famine. There is a spiritual scarcity moving through the world right now, a quiet drought of meaning, stability, and direction, and they can sense that you are not affected by it. You are immune to it. They observe that you are connected to an invisible supply that does not run dry, an inexhaustible source that does not fluctuate with trends, opinions, or external chaos. This realization slowly disarms them. They begin to understand that attacking you produces no reaction, no collapse, no loss of ground. They begin to see that your foundation is not emotional, social, or situational, but eternal in nature. You are anchored somewhere they cannot reach, somewhere untouched by their strategies. This is why the impulse to interfere with you fades. This is why their attention drifts elsewhere. Not because you fought back, but because you did not need to. Your quietness was never about fear, avoidance, or uncertainty. It was about deep security. It was about knowing who you are so completely that no external validation was required. It was about understanding that power does not always announce itself, and strength does not need to be loud. You stopped explaining because truth no longer needed defense. You stopped reacting because peace had taken residence. And now, without saying a word, you have communicated the most decisive message of all. You are untouchable, not because you are aggressive, but because you're established. As we conclude this reflection, Understand that your season of being too quiet has been one of the most productive periods of your life. The world is finally catching up to the reality of who you are and whose you are. You don't need to change a thing. Continue to walk in that low-frequency, high-power peace. Continue to be the sober, calm observer of the miracles God is working in your defense. You have already won the battle in the spirit. Now you are simply watching the manifestation of that victory in the natural. Stay in your peace. Stay in your silence. For the one who called you is faithful, and he is making it very clear to all who watch. You are his chosen, and you are not to be messed with. Amen.